Welcome, Lieutenant Sandhya, to HR Elevate podcast. You are the first guest for this series. And for our audience, I'd like to introduce Lieutenant Sandhya. She's a Navy veteran, a three-time TEDx speaker, and has over 20 years of corporate experience with mentorship, leadership, business transformation, and HR. I hope I didn't miss out anything. If there is,
Uh,
please.
28 years experience and a whole lot of other things actually I've done. Maybe we'll take that up in the course of the conversation. But yeah, I'm a change enabler now, and I do a lot of things which is focused towards adding value to whatever's around me. Let's put it that way.
That's wonderful. Adding value to the world is something we really need more of. I'd like to start with the very first question being, what was your cue to get into HR world?
Uh, People. So, when we think of HR, we're looking at we call it we started with say personnel and it was very administrative when probably HR started, and then they were managing people for basics like their pay and leave and things like that. So that's very administrative in terms of HR. Then we started calling it a human resources. So yeah, we are a resource, but we're also capital. So then it moved to human capital and a lot of that. But eventually, at the bottom line, it's still people, right? So I didn't jump into HR right away. I kind of was doing sales and business development and a lot of other things. And then I had moved on to administrative positions. So sat for an interview for admin position, and they suddenly popped up the question, "Can you do HR?" I'm like, "Okay, why not?" I thought admin things, dead things, right? I mean, they don't
Oh,
have a life of the way that you can interact. So yeah, with people it's easier and tougher, but yeah, it's much more fulfilling at the end of the day.
wow, that's wonderful. Being Having that drive to interact with people and make their lives better is really something valuable and should
It's
be
quite
cherished.
draining also when you look at it. You have to have a balance between the two. You're talking about expending your own energy and, meeting people, uh, interacting with them, paying attention. So all of that requires a certain amount of, your own stillness, your own balance on it. So because you're expending energy, it makes it very difficult to hold on to it. So it depends on the people you meet. Some people are energetic and they vibe and you get the energy. Some you have to pull up from the low energy that they have. So it can be very different for a lot of things, in terms of variances about people because everyone is different. But
Mm.
yeah, people interaction gives me a sense of satisfaction as well, but up to a point now. I'm not
Okay.
as, social or interactive in terms of people as I used to be. So now it's more focused groups. Uh, I'm curious about people. What makes people think? What makes people tick? What's on their mind? How is it going? And you can't understand all of them. You can't read their minds, but it's interesting because I like to write. So for me, almost every person is literally a story in that aspect. I also
Okay.
like to take pictures, so every person for me is also a frame in some way. So I kind of balance out the two, things which are very different and then try to work my way around it. Hopefully, I'm getting better, but I'm also getting selective.
Yeah, being selective is, I think, a inherent part of getting better journey.
Yeah, it is. That's so true.
So, since we will focus on HR, what
Yeah.
was your first assignment as an HR?
Like I was telling you about the admin to HR offer. So this is way
Mm-hmm.
back in 2005, I think. Not 4, 2005. 2004 was my last sales positions. So then I was working in an admin position in a construction firm that does hard finishes. And I was applying to go back to Nigeria because Nigeria was where a majority of my corporate experience was. And
Okay.
the funny part is that I sat for the interview, and it was an admin position, and I had done it before. And administratively, it's all about management. So I'm like, okay, fine, let's do this. And then I had also applied for another place in uh, position in Kenya. So I had these two places. Both of them were interviewing me at the same time, and the Kenya company sent me an offer for GM admin. So I called up the Nigerian end of my, interviewers, and I said, hey, I have a contract that has come to me. If I sign it, I'm not going back. If you have something, you need to tell me in next 24 hours. So um, I got a call within about 3 hours, and they said, hey, can you do HR? And I'm like, in my head, I'm going things, people. I'm like, okay, let's do HR. So I joined this conglomerate called Dana Group of Companies in Lagos, in Nigeria, as a junior HR manager. In 3 months, I took over as group head HR, and I started the entire department on my own. There was nobody in that department. I started from scratch with one intern who
Oh.
worked with me for almost 4 months. Uh, Recruitment was a major thing at that particular point of time, and thereafter everything else started falling into place. But just this intern, and I remember I used to be screening 230 CVs in a day just to finish off the recruitments. And that is at the time, people would not email you your resumes. These were hard
Mhm.
copies. So you had paper, piles and piles of paper. So it's been great. I took over very quickly also because I think I enjoyed what I was doing, and it didn't have to deal with selling something to someone. This was more about people and listening to them and a lot of things. So, and I had a huge mandate from my boss. I could not have done this without him. He told me, he said, this is my pain point. Go and do what you need to do. I mean, that's it. I did not have a KPI or KRA or anything. I just needed to address the pain point. And he said, do what you need to do to build this up and get this sorted out. And I said, okay. So when you
Wow.
have a mandate like that from your boss, then everything is absolutely beautiful because you're taking decisions, you're not checking back, asking, wasting time, because that decision making which is happening on the go helps things improve really quickly, and people look to you thereafter for solutions. So it really made sense to me at that particular time, and I totally enjoyed it. There were 2,500 employees, 250 of them were expats, and I knew every person's file. I knew them by name, and even if I forgot, I knew that I would know everything about him before I meet the person. So there's a personal, relationship or a personal touch to it. So it was an incredible part of my HR journey entirely, and it was a good kickoff. Let's just say that, yeah.
Wow. So, since it was full of the firsts, you started the entire HR department by yourself. What were some of the major initiatives you spearheaded that helped employees' well-being, that
Okay.
targeted employee well-being?
All right. So initial thing was also just to get the ground realities, in position in terms of uh, on-time salary, leave is organized, your, discontent, whoever is discontented in whatever area, that needs to get sorted. So what happened in this particular position was that there were 14 companies, 14
Mm-hmm.
different types of companies that they had. They had manufacturing sector, they had pharma, they had automobiles, they had plastics, they had food. Uh, it was the whole gamut. So now you're exposed to different kinds of needs from different kinds of people. So a lot of the employee welfare and benefits and those kind of things came into play. We structured the salary. Nobody could at random say, okay, I'm hiring you for this much. There was a proper structure to it. There was a proper elevation, a career path that was created for everyone. That hey, this is your next level, this is your next level. So everybody knew, not knew, but they were beginning to see where they were going. And that really helps people, perform much better in their day-to-day thing. So then I started off with the policy documentation, then we started off with the SOPs, the checklist, and every industry has a different checklist. So you
Very true.
have that.
Yes.
Then there were two major union strikes that happened during that time. So one was to deal with the community, one was to deal with the workers, uh, status. So the first one, the community one, was with the automobile sector, and we were distributing Kia brand, in Nigeria. So one of
Okay.
our hotspots was this whole community issue where we have, like you have in India, you have reservations and things like that. So you had this. So you had to literally go and solve out that problem. People will accept you and, will warm up to you even when they're annoyed, when you give them that space to talk, to speak. So, and a lot of that had to do with actually listening and hearing them out and then coming to certain decisions. So, like I said, because of the mandates I had, I made sure every time I go for a conflict resolution, I tell the chairman or the MD, you are not going to even pick a phone call. And even if you pick a phone call from anybody who's within that area of conflict, you will push them back to me. So I took the mandate that he would have given, right? So I needed to know how much salary increase I can give them, what are the benefits I can give them. I sat with him and finished it off, and I said, you will not accept any single call. I am your spokesperson. Nothing will go to you. And you will not say anything, you will not commit to anything beyond this, right? And it works. Because then what you're doing is you're taking decisions right there and you're actually taking signatures, and they feel, okay, this is happening now. It's not going to be a tomorrow or 1 week from now. Those decisions have been taken. Now only an email will come and it's all sorted, but the signatures are there. So people need assurance that they're being looked after. So that is there. Then we started a training department because now you have to transform the entire, way work is being done, the culture and stuff. So they had never had training before. And Nigeria by itself was a place which was, there's a lot of disparity in the income groups. So people who are working on a day job are people struggling because they have huge families. So I realized the team that I was working with. So my own team had people who would probably be eating, 3 meals a day only, or 2 meals a day only for the first week. After that, they are literally on peanut and Coca-Cola. So I mean, this is how it was in Nigeria. So when you look at basics and welfare and things like that, so we started doing, I would just randomly do lunches for them, just order something to eat because I knew they had not eaten. I didn't realize it. I actually had to ask my EA, and what's going on? This girl works great up to a week, and thereafter the energy is down. She said, "Ma'am, she's eating only once a day, and this is what she's eating." And that's when you start digging in and you realize there's a lot going on in everybody's lives. So it really helped me become who I became in terms of HR. So yeah, huge, huge things, all culture changes. Um, so yeah, it was an interesting journey right at the start.
Wow, that's an unimaginable story. Really, knowing that one of your employees is not able to work just because you're not paying them enough either, or they do not have access to
That
food.
too, because see, salary revisions are not really what HR can. We can only recommend. The approvals
Okay.
come from elsewhere. There,
Uh,
that is the thing. But everybody starts blaming HR. You've not done enough for me. But the fights behind the walls are not what the staff is, exposed
yeah,
to.
they don't know.
Yeah, yeah. There's a whole load of bargaining that happens, and you have to make do with certain things, and you just have to let go of certain things and push it for the next time. So a lot of those things happen.
That is very true, actually. The more you get to a responsibility point,
Yeah.
you have to understand that there will be times you have to let go of something important in lieu of something more important.
Yeah. A little tip actually is, you don't have to. do really big initiatives, if you just keep a tab on what's going on in the office, what's going on with people, why they are low on energy or whatever, and you become that sounding board. So what happens is then you can leave little inspirational chits for them even on their table, something just impromptu, because people like surprises. People like nice surprises. So those things, when they work, it just to bring up the morale of the organization is not very tough, especially when you are not really into the segment of doing a DEI or a culture change, not ready for it yet. You have to establish your baseline. So once you establish the baseline and you transit to the DEI, that's a space I've been working in. I've also been working in a space where the transition is from not having HR to having HR. It's one of the toughest and the messiest areas. And to work in, it's also very challenging. But little things can always be done, to make people feel better. So let me just give you an example. For example, आपसे ही पूछती हूँ एक सवाल. Um, when you see a plane flying in the sky,
Uh-huh.
right? What do you think?
I don't really think a lot, honestly. I
You
just,
just say, "Oh,
yeah,
plane, what must be, it must be going somewhere." Okay, that's a generic thought.
yeah.
Which airline or something like that. I'm looking at a plane and I'm like, "Oh, that's 200, 300 stories right inside that plane," right?
Wow.
So when you're looking at it in that manner, you are looking at things in a very different space, from a different angle. And uh, I'm not someone who has, done a lot of studying or courses in terms of any of these things. These have all been extracts from my own life experiences. So when you look at something from your own life experiences and you bring in a new perspective to it, it just changes the way you look at things. So that's where all the difference happens.
Very true. What you learned is through amalgamation of understanding and real life experiences.
Yeah.
And the can only try to capture a small portion of that. And what they are able to impart to students is even, tinier portion.
It's not just your experiences when you look at it, Nishant. It's a lot of your own thoughts. It's a lot of what you learn as lessons, which of course comes from experience, but it's also a lot of little snippets of what you see around you, what is happening with you. You know, uh, for example, you can say, there are two siblings in one house, and the parents have brought them up. Parents are saying, I love you equally, but the sibling does not see it. The child will say, no, you love the other one more, right? But the truth is that the parents were in a different space in their life when they had their first child. So that parenting, the kind of love, the exposure was different. When you come to the next child, your financial status, where you are in your own relationship with your partner, that matters. But you're still loving equally. It just gets shown differently. But it's also a lot about how you feel. So there's a difference in the timeline, there's a difference in the maturity level, there's a difference in the way we look at things. Like if you tell me, ki 20 years ago, how would I have handled something like that? And in retrospect, we may have improved it. But when we were where we were, those things were different. So those experiences are different for us.
That's such a life lesson thing. In retrospect, yes, we could have done it better. This is something I think about so many things. And only recently I added this part. At that time, did I do to the best of my knowledge and experience? Yes,
But
I
you're
did.
judging from a different space, right? You're judging from who you are
Exactly.
today, not who you were then.
Yeah. And that changed a lot of things for me. A lot of perspectives, a lot of regrets went away with that. So yeah, that's a very important thing. Now, you mentioned that you need to, as an HR, you should know your employees. You should know each and every one of them, their stories, what they're facing, and that is how you can help them. Do you think it's also of any use to have them categorized in certain groups? For example, this is a specific type of group which has certain persona. This group has other persona. This way, you can organize selective L&D activities for them. or employee engagement activities for them?
Yeah, okay. When you're looking at L&D activities, and when I say that you need to know your employees better, you can't know their entire lives, all right? But what you can
True.
do as an exercise is identify their strengths, identify their what really is their natural talent, where their skills lie, and understand their aspirations. So when you understand their aspirations, you know where they want to go. You see where their strengths are. If you want to categorize them according to their strengths. So once you categorize them according to their strength, look at the strength that's missing, right? Because that's what's forming your team, right? So one part of the team which has a gap, fill that gap with somebody who has that strength. Don't go honing it
Okay.
on everyone because it doesn't work like that, right?
True.
We
Very
want to be
true.
perfect in everything. For school, for example, you did 10 subjects. You had 10 different teachers, or maybe at least seven or five teachers who taught you all those subjects. But you are
Yeah.
expected to score 100% and become an expert in each of them. What kind of logic is that? Right? We just looking at things very wrong when we look at it. So similarly, in any organization, when you find the gap, you interview the person for it. Most of the initial issues are about hiring the right person. Most of the time, people end up hiring somebody they like, and which means I like this person because he reflects a part of me that I like, right? But
Mm-hmm.
once you hire someone who you like, then it's going to be tough. You're not measuring it by what they can do. You're not supposed to hire someone you like. You're supposed to hire someone who can do that job and passionately, right? So if you hire that person's happy doing what they're doing. They're not also bothered about some other person coming and taking their chair, right? Kursi ka jo khel hai na, it's a little it's very tricky in organizations, and when especially when they're growing, everybody's bothered about their own position, their own job. So label them and categorize them according to their strengths. You will always have a reflective career path or a reflective space of work which works for them. Identify that first. And then you decide, and then you can place them on, okay, this will hone out their skills here, this will hone out their skills there. If there's a huge gap or there's something that they absolutely hate doing, trust me, no amount of L&D is going to help. You need to get the right person for the right thing first, and
Okay.
allow them to do their jobs. Most of the time, there's so much of interference in them doing their job. There's so much helicoptering by the bosses. You're not given time. And then the reports and a lot of things. So what can get automated in any organization needs to get automated first before you even think of L&D. Because most people don't have time. They're doing things manually or still using Excel for something that can get automated. There are so many programs, there are so many platforms which helps do these things, right? So then you get them on an L&D program. And I think, organizations need to look at L&D as an investment. Most people don't invest in L&D, especially in India, where they are, you know, so-called lala run businesses, where they feel कि अरे कल तो छोड़ के चला जाएगा, this person's going to leave and all that training will go to waste. But what you don't realize is there's someone else who might be getting trained somewhere who's also going to come and join you. It's a domino effect, it's a cycle. So don't get
Yeah.
scared of investing, because when you invest in people and honing what their strengths are, focusing on what their passion is, what happens is that they look at work as something that they enjoy, and you like to do something that you enjoy. So when it gets to that,
True.
so L&D is not just about courses, वो तो भूल जाएंगे. So you need to have a great framework at the back end, which is very, very robust, which is very, very steady. And to do that, you have to be looking at people uh, as people and not just as workers who are doing your job. You know, everybody's got aspirations, everybody has ambition, and you need to get to know that. But you will always have people who will oppose. There will be conflicts, and those conflicts, uh, a call has to be taken on those conflicts. Most conflicts can be resolved, but conflicts of ethics, integrity, conflicts of uh, egos, which are really, really strong and they are pulling people down, that that needs to go. So
Wow. So, what I understand is majority of conflicts are because of either ethics, egos, or morality, not the actual topic.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
value
And
system, no?
yeah, true. And for employee engagement, one needs to know their strengths and help them improve their strengths, know their aspirations, and create a plan that supports their aspirations. If someone wants to earn more, give them opportunity to do overtime. If someone wants to have a work life balance, allow them the same thing. If someone values perks more than money in hand, or vice versa, then have it customized to some extent.
Yeah, that's kind of true. I mean, you can't customize everything, you know. When we start
Yeah.
customizing everything, um, we make it we make lazy people when we customize everything. We stop people from thinking for themselves. You can
Ah.
keep a basket. Let's put it at that way.
Mhm.
When you're working on perks, when you're working on privileges, when you're working on these things, if it becomes a part of your CTC and you're working on a work-life balance kind of a thing, then your CTC of these perks, little things that are there, also has a value attached to it, right? So when you put value this, let a person choose what their CTC is going to be like. For some, money may be the thing. Nothing else works for them because they have their own, obligations and other things. For some, a work-life balance works. For some, it's working out and keeping a fit and structured body, for example. For some, it may be cycling. For some, it may be arts. For some, it may be anything. So when you put those kind of things in a basket and say, hey, you can pick these and have a system, for
Mhm.
example, a point system attached to this basket, this many points, this basket, this many points. 100 is your CTC. You pick what you want. Every point has a rupee value, let's put it that way. So when you do it that way,
Yeah.
hey, I want this much salary to be going, which really helps because you're not going to be paying too much of TDS. And then you got these baskets of things that you can pick up. I want more leave, or I want this many working hours. Work it on a flexi thing. We are very hard cast up to a point, but that was 2019. The world has changed. The new normal is not the normal that was before, and it's not normal anymore. We know it is
I
possible
was
to
about to say that.
be in an organization, work from somewhere remotely, and still deliver. What HR needs to do is to learn to manage and keep those people engaged who also work remotely or in hybrid or work from home. There are tons of things that can be done in terms of customizing, but does HR need to spend time customizing? No. You set some parameters and say, okay, let's work within this. Now you pick from your basket. Because almost 80% or 70% of your CTC is literally money, but beyond that are privileges when you're looking at it. So if you are able to spend that kind of quality time, sit with the management and work this out, your CTC also drops a little bit. There are some people who will work on bonuses. I also want bonus. So you create a bonus which is challenging, just out of their comfort zone, but if they put their heart to it, they can achieve it. Interdepartmental conflicts, for example, can be sorted out with this, where you are banking on somebody's delivery and linking it with someone else, especially where there's conflict. Now they have to work together to get that chunk of money. So
Uh-huh.
the toughest ones, put the bigger chunk, right? For sales, you will put it in targets and revenues and cash collected and everything. For
Yeah.
somebody else, it might be something else. But when you link the two bonuses together, it just helps. Your support staff is as much a part of the organization as the front end sales staff. Discrimination shouldn't be happening there. There is discrimination. A lot of incentives and commissions are given to the sales staff, but the support staff doesn't get it. But would they function without the support staff is the question to ask, right? So everything is interrelated. How much you reward what you want repeated is the crux of the game. What you reward will get repeated.
So
You reward bad behavior, you will
perspective.
get bad behavior. You reward good behavior, you will get good behavior. You reward, uh, resolving a conflict, you will not have conflicts. So, there are ways to do these things, but uh, rules are there for you to see it as a guideline. But to create something
Mm-hmm.
which is engaging for them is important. Uh, but then again, there's also a spanko in sales, for example. So there's a process, there's a link, there's a chain. So you follow progress like that. You have to start with integrating your general HR activities, then you start integrating your budgeting, and you start integrating a lot of things, and then you start climbing. Because most people don't see HR as a marketing tool, which is why there's the least investment in training, there's the least investment in HR, least investment in budgets. But it is a marketing tool. Every employee of yours, whether they serve you tea or clean the washrooms,
Uh-huh.
right up to the
Uh-huh.
MD or the chairman, they are representing the brand. They are the
Very
marketing,
true.
the most active marketing tools. They don't feel good about it. They're not going to market you well. No matter what amount of money you spend on advertisements and branding and this and that, someone's going to mess it up for you. And this is also because most organizations in India, let me specify in India, and some in Nigeria where I've experienced this, as I've seen, when people leave that organization, it is like that person's become an enemy. Why? It's like, oh, that's the
Oh
enemy.
yeah,
We are not enemies. I'm sorry, I was doing a job for you. You paid me for it. End of story. I'm moving on because I have
exactly.
aspirations you cannot fulfill, which is why people leave. People leave bad bosses, people leave organizations because they have a conflict with the ethics, with the integrity of the person they're working with or the team they're working with. But they are also about aspirations. They all have ambitions. Just because as an owner you have a dream of making money, that's your dream, but someone else has another dream. And if they're moving on with it
True.
because you cannot help them do it, why is there so much of enmity? Why is that person suddenly the enemy? It's like spending so much time on looking for someone to blame that you don't spend time improving things.
It's like, oh, this person is not very productive for my team, but I don't want him to leave because that will be, a hit on my ego.
Yeah, and
मुझे
you
कैसे
see,
छोड़ के
Nishant,
चला
the
गया?
thing is, अगर कोई ये podcast देख भी रहा होगा ना, when they're looking at this podcast and they're watching me, uh, organization heads are going to be really worried. They don't want to hire me. They want me, but they don't want me because I'm going to be very straight to their face and tell them, ki, hey, these are the things that you need to improve. Employees will be like, oh, I want an HR head like that. So there can be any way of looking at it. I'm very, very direct with what I say. So it kind of also puts me in a space where people are like afraid to ask or afraid to say something. That also happens sometimes, but at least I will be saying it just the way it is. Calling a spade is important.
That's very important and very undervalued skill. And somehow
Absolutely.
from childhood we are actually ingrained with a couple of things. One being, do not confront people if you can avoid it. And if you can avoid it also means, putting it in sugar coated words. Okay, so if you meet an HR who is not very people centric, what would you like to tell them?
Ah, I would like to tell them to move to operations, administrative work, which deals with things, not people.
If they want to stay in HR and get better, like advice to get better.
Advice to get better is they need to identify what their strengths are. There are a lot of, uh, you know, tests available in the market. One of the most interesting tests on my own self that I'd done in terms of identifying strengths was the lineal, test. It's not very expensive, but it gives you a very comprehensive detail, or it's like a 46-page report that I received, I remember. And then you go through a counseling
Wow.
session and understanding what the report is telling you and focus on the career that it suggests for you. As far as my report was concerned, when I'm talking about, which I took about a month and a half ago, 100% accuracy with my current life, where I am today. 100% accuracy it was. And I was amazed because, most reports will tell you what you've done in your past and other things, but it doesn't tell you where you stand and why you stand there. And when I sat with the
Yeah.
person to understand the report, it was more like a discussion about who I am about rather than just a discussion on what career paths. Because a lot of times gets spent on if you don't understand your own report with who you are. So self-awareness is very important. So for anybody who's not in touch with the people inside them, the person they are, it's very difficult to be in touch with people
Yeah.
outside. So it's work in progress all the
Very true.
time. So focus on a lot of time. Give yourself time. Sit with silence. Don't switch on the TV, don't flip channels,
That
don't
gives
go
you
looking for a series, but actually just sit with yourself, take a break, and take a mandatory break and keep increasing that timeline. So I kind of work about 4 hours a day now, and I don't work more than that. I take my breaks when
Oh,
I feel
that's
like
the actual. Uh-huh.
4 hours a day. But weekends mostly I'm
That's the
working.
actual amount of work a person can
Huh. I find Thursday is very convenient for chutti, so I take chutti or give myself a complete break on Thursday and half of Friday maybe. And then Saturday it starts getting busy again. But then I'm not in dread of Mondays anymore because Monday is not the first day for me, right? It has transited to a
take.
space where it's very flexible. So when it's flexible, it just makes it more enjoyable. So I may decide today, hey, I don't want to interact
Yeah.
with people, so I'll pick up work which doesn't need me to talk to people. So this is of course, these are the perks of working freelance. The not so interesting perks of working freelance is someday you have money and someday you don't. So you can be flexy about it's a give and take. There's a price to pay for everything, right? But it just choose what you pay for. Choose something of value that you will pay
Yeah.
for, not something of regret, not something of sadness. Don't pay for sadness. Don't pay for stress. Don't pay for hypertension. But preventive, being self-aware and choosing your wins, choosing your projects to work with people you really enjoy working with, people who have the same set of values as you have, that's important.
That is very true, and a lot more people should take cognizance of this and
Yeah,
act on it. The world will be a happier place just because you decided to choose what you really want to choose.
yeah. So that happens.
And what would you say to a CEO who does not value HR other than someone who does the hiring, firing, and salaries?
That's a very, very tricky question. I don't know what you can say to a CEO. A person has to be receptive.
Hmm.
Receptive means to be the ability to take in as much sweetness as the willingness to take in bitterness, negativity, or something that is said by way of wanting you to improve as a person, right? So
Hmm.
CEOs are usually not people who listen too much to people down the line. I wish they did. Because, HR eventually is a confidant. They're telling you where they can see things going haywire. So a
Yeah.
CEO is essentially somebody who's constantly in meetings, constantly bombarded with a lot of things that are happening operationally in every department. So, but what's happening with the people? Where is it going? Where's the organization going in terms of people? Where's the organization going in terms of budgets, people budgets? Where is it going in terms of investment versus output? ROI, right? People are an
Uh-huh.
investment eventually in any organization. Is their output the same? Are you valuing the people you bring in? So these are the questions that keep getting constantly raised with CEOs. Where it's a multinational company, people are very organized when it's a huge organization because they've transited and grown to that stage. But where people are just transiting or it's owner driven business, but they want to be corporate but
Mm-hmm.
aren't, there you have a problem. So it's the willingness of the CEO to be able to listen and give it a thought and look at it from another perspective, right? That's what makes you an effective CEO. If I'm looking at something
Wow.
from my perspective, I'm also looking at it from is it harming the organization or is it not harming the organization in the long run? You need to be looking at that. So most CEOs don't accept that. But I've also seen CEOs and MDs and chairmen who are very receptive to this. So they are people who will go and do a course, mingle with other CEOs, and understand how their businesses are being run, which is why it's very important to have a networking community in which you interact with other people of your own levels and people who are in your core team, right? So supposing I'm the CEO and I'm going and meeting another CEO, I would also love to meet their HR, I would love to meet their CFO, I would love to meet their sales head because it gives me a perspective of how that business is being run, how that leadership is working. So opening yourself to seminars, opening yourself to conferences, opening yourself to attending, specific retreats, conclaves. These are important spaces. So if a CEO does not understand HR, they need to start attending HR conclaves. They need to start attending
Okay.
the trends that are happening in the industry in terms of HR and how it benefits them. Because what you don't know, you don't know. But if you don't open up yourself, you
Hmm.
don't have time for, a month-long course or 10 days course. But you can always go and attend a conference and actually pay attention and not do other stuff while it's happening. Actually pay attention and interact with those people. Ask them prevalent questions. Tell them, hey, if this is a pain point, how do we resolve? How do you resolve it in your organization? Understand the way things work with other HR people, with other organizations. What is their relationship? How does the dynamic, how do the dynamics between the two work? That's critical. And that exposure comes with a networking community. For example, right now I'm the chief engagement officer for BANC. Now, BANC is a business and professionals, business networking club, which is also India's first
Mm-hmm.
refer for profit, which means every referral you do business with, you also earn something. But the key part about it is everyone is learning from everyone in this. We meet twice a week, minimum, uh, as a group, and then we also, interact with one another, find some synergy somewhere, and interact and do business with each other, but also improve our own systems and processes as a result of this. So it's important to say bring in speakers because
Mm-hmm.
घर की मुर्गी दाल बराबर है, so दाल बराबर है. Right. So
True.
an HR may be telling your CEO something which is he's not absorbing or she's not absorbing at all. But when an outsider comes and tells you the same thing and you pay them for it, you're listening. So organize
That's
seminars,
important.
organize conclaves, organize impromptu things. Communication needs to be very, very different, but absorption of what's happening around you is very important. Everybody tends to, where there's conflict between HR and CEO and the management most of the time, they're living in a bubble where they feel the world that exists only exists like this and these are the only rules. No, it's not. It's a bubble. Our whole universe is also a bubble. And there's several universes with bubbles, right? So, I mean, what are we talking about? A little speck, a tiny dot. And you're focusing on so much on the negativity, so much on the bad in the person that you forget to see the good the person brings to the table. So, I mean, it's a tricky space. Every person is different, every personality is different, every CEO's experience is different. So they bring that to the table. So I would rather work with somebody who's a hard taskmaster, but somebody who would listen, someone who understands where I come from, someone who uses and utilizes my strengths and respects that. Respect, very important. You cannot demand respect. I get grips sometimes, ki, hey, you don't respect me. I'm like, you need to earn it. You can't
Yeah.
demand respect from kids. You need to earn it. You can't be doing duplicity with the kids. You're telling एक sentence होगा, you should not lie, and the next one will be, Daddy, there's a call from your office. Tell them I'm not here. So it, it can be so many things. I mean, a lot of things happen for different reasons. So yeah, it's critical that you decide whether you want to stay on or move. If you're staying on, improve it. Improve the space around you. If you cannot, there's wisdom in moving on.
So about BANC, it's in Delhi.
Bank is no, we have members international and national. We are spread across about 8 countries now. And
Okay.
Bank is it was founded by somebody who used to be he's a CA by profession, used to be in HSBC Amex, and he founded it. And it has grown. It's almost 3 years now. It's going to be 3 years in July, and it's a great environment to work in. We are all
So
working. There's nobody sad. Nobody's upset about something. If someone feels something is going on, we talk it out, we help it out. So there's a whole community that helps build businesses and helps also invest in businesses that have good sound, foundation. So there's a whole lot of things happening, and just to let you know, Nishant, I keep posting about this. The leadership team in bank
uh-huh.
is 87% women.
Wow.
It was founded by a man, but the women have been given amazing opportunities. And uh, he kind of also said, why we have more women in the team is because they are efficient. They have amazing capabilities to be able to, manage people and be able to interact with them, and they're working to the strengths. So yeah. Uh, he has a lot to say about why he picks women for work, although it looks discriminatory. Trust me, when we interview men and women for the work, but we just look at what we need in terms of strengths, and if those strengths are available, it doesn't matter which gender. So gender inclusivity is there. you know there is no contest here that
You need reverse gender inclusivity, Abhi.
we have a lot of women in the team.
Well, recently, actually, my founder did a post about it as well. So, हम interns hire कर रहे थे, going through every CV, and she's like, लड़के ले ले, like interns, लड़के ले ले. I mean, मेरे को
I
तो
think the
इतना
only
stringent
time
है,
I
and
I get a little iffy when people specifically ask for women for sales. They need to be pretty. These are the criteria I get. I've gotten these kind of criteria, by the way, from the boardroom. We need them to be able to wear Western clothes. We need them to be very outgoing, and they should be able to socialize very well. They should be pretty. Ah, they were the worst hires I did, most difficult ones, because I had to now find somebody who's super smart and all of these things, right? To pick the right person, but it doesn't work for me. It feels very cheap.
it's
So yeah, I've kind of
it
objected to those
does.
things and not been received very well by the board. Uh, but these are truths and they exist.
Egos.
Not just egos, it's just
Wow.
the unethical part of it. Like you're already objectifying women in a boardroom and you're talking about it, and you want, of course you can't put that in a in a job post, but you want that criteria to be there as a filtering process. Like, whoa, do you mean to say that if it's not a good looking guy, they can't sell? What are we talking about? So बहुत सारी चीजें होती है.
सुना है. मैं कॉर्पोरेट वर्ल्ड में ज्यादा
नहीं
घुसा नहीं
होता
हूँ.
है.
I was like, I got
नहीं नहीं होता है. Yeah, it happens.
a बैंक मुझे काफी इंटरेस्टिंग लगा इसलिए मैं पूछ रहा था यू मेंशन दैट यू गाइस मीट ट्वाइस अ वीक सो लाइक
Yeah.
ऑनलाइन
This is
ओके आई
online.
लव
We
टू
have
join some
offline meet once in a month. So we also have an Indore chapter. We've got a Bangalore chapter starting. We have a Bombay chapter starting. So the target for the year is literally to be able to have a pan-India presence because we already have a presence in 7 other countries. But in India, we want to be able to bring in, most of the states. We should have some representatives. So we're doing that. We've also started an initiative with uh, giving internship to veterans. So people from the forge who are retiring or are in transition, and it's to give them networking, business, professional networking, internship experience because most veterans don't have access to CEOs, MDs, owners of businesses, and have no understanding or exposure literally to how business is done. And it's a key exposure that's required for them to transit into a corporate life or start their own business. So what we've done
okay
is we give them 2 months of internship and another additional month of membership as a compensation where they learn and they shadow business people and see how it's being done and also build their networks. So they get connected to people who are key in the industry. They build those relationships, and those relationships help them get either their jobs or their funding or their startups going or whatever else. So that is an initiative we've recently started, and we have three veteran interns with us. So we've already
wow
started with that internship, and it's open for any of the 4Gs who have retired and feel that they need to understand and make connections because without connections nothing works these days. So those making those
right
connections is important, and this is just an initiative to help them transit through a little bit. Mere time pe there wasn't anything. I just had to dive right in, and people are maybe more organized about it now and more self-aware. Also, the internet has shrunk the world, so access is easy, but access is also because of the internet just as difficult. So to open up those doors and access, to be able to give them tips on how to work the social networking sites, how do you build up your references, how do you build up a solid profile, all those things are part of the internship that we do. So we do this for
great
college students as well, and we do this for veterans.
oh nice okay I'll wrap up the podcast and then I want to know more about bank
Okay.
thank you Lieutenant Sandhya for sharing your wisdom and knowledge on this I'm sure a lot of CEOs and HRs are gonna look twice and be like, okay, this is art, but it's important.
You will also have a lot of people say she doesn't know anything right now. That's very limited. And I'm okay with that. I think everything is a learning curve. So, yeah.
True. And with that, let's close the very first episode of HR Elevate podcast. Thank you again.